Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the webinar today on audiometric testing. Today is all about, my intention in putting this one together, this webinar for you, is to help us understand, this is for safety managers, supervisors, company owners, HR, anybody who's involved in coordinating occupational health testing and training to understand audio testing. When do we test? What's the trigger? What situation triggers the need to conduct a noise assessment, noise survey? I'm going to touch on that a little bit. And then when do we need to conduct audiometric testing to do an initial baseline test? When do we do follow-up testing? I've got some FAQs, some things that we commonly get asked when it comes to audiometric testing. And if you've got questions as we go through, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll either answer them as they come up or at the end, just kind of see how it goes. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. Otherwise, I will kind of at the end of it as well ask again. One final check if you got any questions. So today's about audiometric testing, protecting hearing at work. I want to give you some practical audiometric testing knowledge. That's what today is. So here's specifically where we're going to go. Why audio testing matters. Who specifically needs to be tested. It's generally not everybody at your company. There's only specific people who need to be have an audio test. So who are those people? What are the provincial rules? Because province by province, there's some differences. It would be nice if it was just federally mandated, some of this stuff, but of course it's not. So we get to be up on each, what province are you working in? We're going to talk about the 4 Western provinces today: Alberta, Sask, Manitoba, BC. That's the ones I'm going to focus on because there are some differences. Number 4 on the agenda is what's normal versus abnormal, or some of you are probably getting more familiar with this term, significant threshold shift. Talk about that and what do we do when there's an abnormal or significant threshold shift. And then what information do you as the company designated employer representative get, the manager, the supervisor, what info do you get, what do you not get, and then what does the worker receive? Again, some time for Q&A. Then I'll talk a little bit about how Assure can support you in managing your audiometric testing program. So my name is John Rakoczy. I'm the founder and CEO of Assure. Over 16 years, we've been doing occupational health testing in Western Canada. Home head office is Lloydminster, Saskatchewan/Alberta, but we service Canada-wide. We've got 138 partner clinics across the country where we can schedule any kind of testing that you're needing, drug and alcohol testing, any of the occupational health testing services, and supervisor training and policy development as well. So let's dive into audiometric testing, why it matters. So noise-induced hearing loss is usually permanent, but it can be preventable. So how do we, there's a few different ways that our hearing can be damaged and we can lose our hearing. And one of the big ones, of course, is noise exposure. So when we say noise, it's anything over 85 decibels is generally what we're referring to. So many different factors, but some, hearing loss can be hereditary. It can be genetic, of course. It can be caused from illnesses. This is one of the reasons why we do the health history. When somebody comes in for a hearing test, we ask for a medical history from each of the employees who come in to ask them get some of this information. And of course, noise-induced or hearing loss can also be noise-induced. When you work in a noisy environment without hearing protection, of course, that can damage hearing. So OH&S, WCB has a vested interest in minimizing the risk of noise-induced hearing loss, which is why they've made it, and OHS has made it a requirement for employers to conduct audiometric testing if a certain threshold is met, which we'll talk about. Audiometry is also the early warning system. It lets you find hearing changes before they become permanent and evaluate if your hearing conservation program is working. So audiometric testing gets to be part of a broader hearing conservation program that you've got at your company. So it involves a hearing conservation program involves, what kind of hearing protection do we provide our workers? Canadian Standards has guidelines and recommendations on this, whether it's plugs, whether it's ear muffs, or whether it's both. If you've met the threshold for minimum decibel level exposure for your workers, again, it's something that's going to be provincially mandated, but Canadian Standards is, across the country, which a lot of the provincial OHS books will reference. They might not say a specific rule on a specific topic like this one, but they'll reference the Canadian Standards. So your hearing conservation program gets to be a little bit more broader than just we do hearing testing. That's part of it, but it should also include, we do background noise assessments, whether you might get a worker to wear a dosimeter for a day to evaluate their noise exposure. It should be talking about, again, what kind of hearing protection your workers wear, doing training on hearing protection, and doing hearing protection fit testing, which is another test that gets to be done separate from audiometric testing. So some of you might be familiar with Alberta. It's about almost 2 years now that it's been mandated that if your workers are exposed to over 85 decibels LEX, that companies need to provide hearing protection fit testing. So again, similar to a mask fit, not every mask fits every face, not every hearing protection works or adequately protects every worker's hearing. So it might, your hearing conservation program should be speaking to that as well. Do we do hearing protection fit testing? How often? What kind of protection do we use? So next thing I want to touch on is, when do we conduct audiometric testing? So the trigger for inclusion in a hearing conservation program or audiometric program is generally when a worker's time-weighted average exposure meets or exceeds 85 decibels. So most of us are familiar with that. 85 decibels, that's kind of in our hammered into us. 85 decibels, do a hearing test. Which of course is generally the rule in every province. So, but how do we know if our workers are exposed to 85 decibels or more over your shift? How you know is you first conduct a noise exposure assessment, or you might know it in your company as a noise survey. Generally the same thing. So this noise survey is where somebody comes in with a sound level meter, or you get your employees to wear a dosimeter for the duration of their shift to find out what are they exposed to. So the difference there is a dosimeter would be a little machine that they would clip onto themselves. Generally, it's you want it to be kind of high up near your ear to get a better result of what's actually entering their ears. If it's on their foot, clearly that's not going to give you the best readings, but generally in this area, they'd wear it. It's a small device. They'd wear it for the day, for 8-hour shift or 10-hour, whatever it is. They'd wear it for the day. It would spit out results and then give an average. Over the course of a day, this worker is exposed to 92 decibels. So that's a dosimeter, something that you'd wear for the shift. A sound level meter is a different instrument where it's more typically used for shorter term noise assessments, meaning like 10 seconds, a couple of minutes, to give you a reading. When a vac truck is fired up and the vac truck is running and I'm standing in front of it at ear level of a typical worker, what's the reading? So that's the difference between those two instruments. So the first thing to help you determine who needs to have a hearing test, do your noise exposure assessment, and in there it's going to outline which employees kind of fall under this. Who works in the shop where there is noise up to 115 decibels intermittently, for example. So what is 85 decibels LEX? So to explain that, what this means is it's a daily noise exposure equal to or greater than 85 decibels, averaged out over an 8-hour workday. Your company might do 10, 12 hours, but generally 85, again, decibels LEX is averaged to an 8-hour workday, just to give us in the all of us, the standard to work to. So LEX, what that means is it's the equivalent continuous sound level over 8 hours. So it's the average. So I put an example in there. Examples help me to kind of make it a little bit more plain and clear. So if an employee over an 8-hour shift, if 2 of those hours were generally at 95 decibels, another 4 hours in that overall 8-hour shift was at about 85 decibels, and another 2 hours was at 75 decibels. You add all of those up, divide by 8, the average is going to be 85. So we've met the threshold in this example. We've met the threshold of 85. If it was 86, 102, whatever it is, over 85, that worker needs to complete audiometric testing. So now every province is different in terms of how often do we test, when do we do it, and we've got some other little nuances here for us. The first province we'll talk about is Alberta. So what triggers the test? Anyone who's exposed to 85 decibels or more in a work shift. So another interesting thing here is, when do we conduct a noise assessment? Not too long ago, Alberta OHS made a small change here to say companies must conduct a noise assessment or that noise survey when workers are exposed to 82 decibels. So there was some confusion when this change came out. Do we need to do testing on our workers when they're exposed to 82 decibels now? No, it's still 85 decibels, but 82 is the trigger to complete a noise exposure assessment. That's when you would do the assessment. So in Alberta, how often do we test? When do we test? So the first test should be completed. The baseline should be, here's the language, as soon as reasonably practicable, but no later than 6 months after employment starts. Or if I've been employed in a job for a couple of years and I've been in the office and now I'm going out to the field, so now I'm exposed to noise. Well, now when there's a job change, as soon as reasonably practicable, or no later than 6 months after that, my exposure to noise would begin. So Alberta is within 6 months of hire, then 12 months after that, then every 2 years ongoing. 6, 12, 24. That's what Alberta is. So who completes the testing? Audiometric technician. So that's all of us at Asher Occupational Testing are audiometric technicians. All the techs completing it are audiometric technicians. And we work in consultation with an occupational health physician. That's what we do specifically at Assure. The code says you can also work in consultation with an audiologist, OHN. Again, this is just Alberta we're talking about right now. Not every province will accept an OHN, for example. So those are the individuals in Alberta who are qualified to review the abnormals of their significant threshold shifts. So that's Alberta. Saskatchewan, the trigger is again 85 decibels. Anyone exposed to over 85 gets to complete testing. How often do we do testing? All that the code says is at least once every 24 months. At least once every 2 years. What a lot of programs do, again, this isn't required by the code, but what a lot of companies and programs do in Saskatchewan is they just decide themselves, we're going to do a baseline within 6 months of hire, or 6 months of first exposure. But the minimum requirement is only to do that once every 2 years for Saskatchewan. Manitoba, again, trigger is 85. The baseline, as soon as reasonably practical, within 6 months of exposure, and then every 2 years after that. British Columbia, trigger is 85. Frequency is to do it at least annually. So now let's talk about the results. We've done the test. We've got the results. How do we give you some insight into what do we do and how do we interpret the results? So if there's a normal result, so every province interprets the results differently. So I'll put this up. I'll show us this and I'll go back to the other slide in a second. So a lot of you are familiar with this. I'm sure most of you here or watching this have completed an audiometric test yourself. And once the test is done, you know that you get a card like this that gives you your result. So it's left ear, the right ear, 500 hertz up to 85 or 8,000. So 500 will be the low deep tones, gradually getting up to high pitched 8,000. So you're gonna get your card back, and it's gonna you filled in with your results. It's gonna say 0, 5, 20, 30. It could go all the way from 0 to 100. That's gonna be full of all of your results. So every province is going to interpret those results a little bit differently. Generally, they're pretty similar, but there are some differences. So every province is going to interpret that differently. So how we interpret it is, where are you, or where is your worker working? Where's home base for your company? This is where, if you're working in multiple provinces, we can get the question, well, how do we interpret these? Because they all interpret them a bit differently. It's your audio, it's your hearing conservation program. Ultimately, you get to decide and advise us. We're going to interpret them based on this province. What we do is a lot of, if you're working in Alberta and Saskatchewan, for example, a little bit of both, I would advise pick the higher standard, which would be Alberta. So quite often our clients who are working in both will choose to interpret them according to Alberta. But if your head office is in Saskatchewan, you might say we're going with Saskatchewan. So you're going to get those results back, and they're going to tell you, is this result normal, abnormal, or significant threshold shift? It's going to be one of those. So you notice on the card, we don't give that out. We just give to the worker the results of their test. On our end, we document, is this normal or abnormal? We've got criteria that we evaluate that with, depending on the province. So if the result is normal, no further action is needed. Nothing, the test is done, it's completed, nothing else needs to be done until their next, annual or biannual test. So for example, what constitutes a normal in Alberta is if you look at this card and you see all the numbers are 25 or less, that constitutes a normal in Alberta. Saskatchewan, for example, they would add up all the numbers in your left ear. So just take separate ear, left and right, add it up separately. So add up all the values from 500 to 1,000, 2, 3, 4, 6. They ignore 8,000, add them all up, divide by 6 for 6 frequencies. They want to see that average in each ear 25 or less. So that's how Saskatchewan does it. This part, you don't have to worry about. That's what we get to worry about for you when you work with us to do your testing. Our staff evaluates this for you and lets the workers know. So that's a normal. Abnormal, or significant threshold shift. Again, different language that you might be familiar with. Typically, a review is needed, but not always. Most often there is, but for example, in Alberta for a baseline abnormal, Alberta says we don't need to send that for review, only for a baseline. If it's for a follow-up test, those ones may need to be sent for review. So sometimes you can do a test, get your results, and there's certain criteria where you might have heard from our office, this employee needs to be sent in for a retest after 30 days or when some symptoms have cleared up. So here's some of these instances where when a retest might be recommended. So if an employee comes in for their hearing test and they tell us they've got a current cold or flu symptoms, so head cold, chest cold, if there's a head cold, that can impact a person's hearing and not give us an accurate hearing test result. So if they come in and they've got a test, generally we will continue to do the test. They're in our office, they've taken the time to come in, and at that point, if it's the first time we're finding out, oh, I've got a head cold, most people aren't. Most people are saying, book me on a day when it's cleared up, but sometimes it happens. At that point, yes, we continue to do the test. And the reason is they're already in our office, let's do the test, because sometimes even with a cold, it can get a normal result. But if an abnormal result is triggered, then we're going to look at, do they have any current cold or flu symptoms, asthma, allergies? Had they been exposed to loud noise in the past 14 hours without hearing protection? If they have excessive wax buildup in their ears, If there's excessive ambient noise meaning they're in a soundproof room, or but there's a jackhammer operating right outside, so we couldn't get the minimum background noise levels for this test, or if we've got some faulty equipment. Any of those we might say it's recommended this employee be retested. So in that circumstance, we will notify the employee and we'll notify the company manager as well. So if there's an abnormal, just to go a little bit deeper in the next steps, again, we notify the worker, we'll get them retested. Sometimes it's within 30 days. Sometimes it's just, if there's cold symptoms, we might say when your cold is cleared up, book yourself in for a retest. When if you've got compacted wax in your ears, go and get that flushed out, then book yourself in. So not always is it just a hard and fast 30 days, but clear up the issue that triggered the retest, then you can book yourself back in. So if after that retest, it's still confirmed abnormal, the next thing that we're going to do is refer to an audiologist or a physician. Province specific meaning some provinces will say an RN, for example, is an approved person to review in some provinces. Some say it can't be an RN, it can only be an occupational health physician. So we at Assure do that for you. We send that on, we get that reviewed. We send in their medical history that they've completed during the test. As part of the eval that we do when they come into our office or one of our partner clinics' office, we send that and the test results. We get that review back from the occupational health physician. Then we release that review result to the employee. So the recommendations are made related to the worker. So another common question is, what info do I get as the manager, as the employer, and what do I not get? So what you're getting as the company is you're getting the overall result. So you'll get John Rakoczy's result on this date for a baseline audio test was normal. That's what you're getting. So I'm going to go back to this card. So what that means is what you're not getting is you're not getting all of those numbers, all of those values. 0, 5, 20s, 30s. You're not getting all of that. That's considered confidential medical information. The employee gets that. The company does not. The company gets normal, abnormal, significant threshold shift. So what remains confidential is the full medical details, their detailed audiogram, and their medical history. So here is a practical checklist that I put together, just some high-level things to, based on what we've covered today. So where this starts is you get to complete a noise exposure assessment if you think your workers are exposed to 85 decibels or more. If you're in Alberta, you need to complete that if they're exposed to 82 or more. So that's the first thing. Conduct that noise exposure assessment. If you've got new equipment, if you've got a new building, a new shop, any changes in the environment, you should be updating a noise exposure assessment to make sure it's accurate. Can be and not just something that happened a few years ago and it's been forgotten about. Yes, common questions around that is, well, who can conduct that? Quite often that's done internally. Safety managers can do this. There is training that can be received for safety managers to do this. You can buy your own equipment to do it. If you want support with that, reach out to me afterwards. I can advise you and point you in the direction for that. So complete that noise exposure assessment. Enroll your impacted employees in an Audiometric program. So if you're not currently doing it and you want to start doing it, you get to educate them about it. First, create a noise conservation program. Roll that out to your staff, give them opportunity to read it, to get familiar with it, have training sessions on it or education sessions on it in a staff meeting. Get them on board with it. Because sometimes what we get is when we show up in the mobile testing trailer, for example, and we're testing 50 employees in a morning, sometimes we'll get questions or fears. I'll hear fears from employees saying, well, am I going to fail this test? I got bad hearing. I don't want to do this. It's none of their business, none of my company's business that my hearing is bad. And we can get a few comments like that. Typically, it's fear that am I going to fail this? Am I going to get fired if I don't have good hearing? So what we encourage, affirm them in is this isn't, something that's going to trigger you to be fired. That's not what this is about. What this is about is OHS and WCB have noticed over many, many years of researching safety sensitive and employers where there's lots of noise, that there is noise-induced hearing loss. So therefore, the employers and companies have an obligation to mitigate this risk and offer support to their employees who are exposed to noise on the job. So, and if so, then they need to offer training, they need to provide hearing protection, they need to provide testing to minimize the risk of hearing loss to the worker. So it's for the worker. It's not about, we want to find out who's got poor hearing so we can get rid of them. Of course not. But sometimes without proper education, employees don't know. And they feel like, if I fail this, am I going to lose my job? It's not about losing your job or keeping your job. It's a benefit to you as the employee. So enroll them in the program. You want to make sure they're educated on why are we doing this. Schedule the base, and the other thing you want to educate them on is what info does the employer get and what do they not get? Because another thing that we get questioned on by the employees when they come for a test sometimes is, if I tell you this information, are you just going to tell my employer? So we discussed with them, here's what they get to know and here's what they don't get to know. So that we're not going to be revealing the details of the medical health history that you tell us about illnesses and injuries and things like that that you've revealed to us during the intake. That they don't know. What they're going to learn is, what's your overall result? Normal, abnormal, significant threshold shift. So the next thing you're going to do is schedule that testing based on your province, based on the province that you're following. Is it within 6 months of hire, 12 months after, 24 months after that? Is it annually? You're going to schedule that. And, another side note on that is, because a lot of companies like to do annual testing, get us to bring our mobile testing trailer to site and test everybody at once. That can be kind of the quickest, easiest, simplest way that we know. It's March, okay, everybody, we're due for hearing tests. But then you hire employees throughout the year, of course. You don't just hire everybody in February and get them tested in March. So then, should we be testing them on their anniversary day? Is it easier for us to have 50 or 100 testing schedules? Is it easier for us to just kind of eventually get everybody the most 80% done annually? That's something that you get to decide. So what that could mean is, you might hire somebody 1 month and then the group testing is 3 months later and they get tested again just to get them on the schedule. Some companies say, yeah, that's easier for us just to manage. That's the route we're going. So just something to consider to help you with managing all that there is to manage. I know there can be a lot to manage in your OC health programs, but that's where we come into. And Carrie, our manager, she's on this call right now too. She's really good at reminding companies of when your employees are due. That's part of how we help you, support you with your program. So the other thing on the checklist here is, if there's STS or abnormals flagged, retest within 30 days or once clear, if that's recommended. Refer to an audiologist or physician if that's required. So a couple other FAQs. Can we require employees to get audiograms? Are we mandating this? What if somebody refuses? So if exposure triggers the program, yes, employer must provide the testing. For non-program situations, so somebody who's, it's not required, not exposed to 85 decibels or more, be cautious. You don't want to, make it a requirement when it's to be tested when it's not required by OHS code. So next one is, do we need to pay for tests or time off? Yes, the code says the employer pays for the cost of the test and the employee is compensated for their time to go to a test, whether that's on-site, where it's off-site. So on days off, they're being compensated for going in for the test on days off. So some resources, more resources to go and get info from. Alberta OHS code, if you're looking for Alberta stuff. WorkSafe BC, Manitoba WSH, Sask OHS. That's where we can find out some more details. So another question that we commonly get is, tell us about the on-site testing that you can do, the mobile testing trailer. So this is the drone here is going to zone in on our mobile testing trailer. You can see it there hooked up to the black truck. So this, we're able to do on-site mobile audiometric testing in our soundproof trailer. So the back half of this trailer is a soundproof room, certified soundproof room, where we can conduct we've got 4 stations in it, or we can do 4 audiometric tests at once. So on the screen there, on the right-hand side, there's 2 stations. Directly opposite, there's 2 more stations. So what that means is in 15 minutes, we can complete 4 audio tests at one time. So we're able to get through high volumes of people quickly. And to give us a bit more, okay, first off, other things that we can complete in the trailer is audiometric testing, respirator fit testing, hearing protection fit testing. So quite often those two go hand in hand. If you're doing hearing testing, quite often companies also need to do hearing protection fit testing, meaning making sure workers are properly fitted, properly inserting and using earplugs, if that's what your conservation program determines is appropriate for your workers, or muffs. So we have a specialized equipment where we conduct hearing protection fit testing directly at site as well. Pulmonary function testing, drug and alcohol testing, all of that is able to be completed inside the mobile testing trailer. So some other questions that we commonly get about the trailer is, how many can you do? So I've given us some scenarios here, or how many can we do in a day? So the numbers here is based on an 8-hour day. One machine that refers to respirator fit testing with audio, we can do 4 people at once. And if there's a schedule. So Carrie, again, what she's really good at is scheduling and making sure that employees know when am I booked for my test? When do I go over to the trailer? So when there's a tight schedule, we've got a manager with the company on site who is good at keeping the flow of employees moving. And we can get through approximately 112 hearing tests in an 8-hour shift, for example. If hearing protection fit testing, we can get through about 56 in a day. Masks, about 56. If you want audio testing and mask fit testing, for every employee, you get through about 84 in a day. Mask fit and hearing protection, same, about 84 in a day. I know some can find that helpful. How many can we get through? So we're able to get through lots in the trailer. So a lot of people like this for when you've got a lot of employees to get tested. And we also show up for 10 individuals. So you don't have to be doing high volume testing to get the trailer to come out. We'll come out for 10 employees, to give you an idea too. So some of the advantages of using the trailer is, when we come on site, we tend to, right to work, we tend to find you get more people done, more people actually tested, rather than booking them in the clinic. Because what can happen is, book in the clinic, people, we can get more no-shows than when we come on site. Better control. Supervisors can coordinate testing without employees being off-site for hours. It's one of the great things about on-site is they can just walk across the yard, go into the trailer, get their testing done, back to work. So way less downtime for employees. You can create a schedule that works for you. We can book it on your training day, your safety day. We can come in the evening. We can come early morning. So you can book it around a time that works best for you. And a lot of companies will do that. They'll book it with a safety training day, or another course that might be happening in the boardroom, and the trailer is outside. Kill a couple birds with one stone. So Finally, before we get to questions, if y'all have any, a few of the advantages of working with us at Assure is, or how do you work with us is call, email us if you got questions about your province, about audiometric testing, any other services we've talked about, and you want help managing your program or something specific, a specific case. I'm going to put my contact info up in a bit. You can contact myself or Carrie. Happy to talk with you further. If you want a quote on on-site testing, in-office testing, if you're hiring in Calgary, you want a quote for testing there. In Vancouver, happy to provide testing quotes wherever you're hiring or working. So typically you inquire, we give you a quote, we set the dates. We're talking about on-site testing now. We sign the agreement, get you to sign it, and then schedule the testing. We send you the forms. What makes this testing on-site go really smooth is when employees complete the paperwork prior. They come to the trailer with it completed. That's how we can get through employees in large numbers pretty quickly. So on the testing day, they'll get their testing card given to them with their audiometric test results. And then afterwards, typically it's within 1 day, the employee version of the result is uploaded to Test Checks. That's our online result reporting software. The team does that once we're back in the office. And then that's how you as the DER, the company representative, can access your copy of the results. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can find out more about us at assuretesting.com. My email is john@assuretesting.com, or you can email Carrie at assuretesting.com as well. She's our manager, more than able to answer any questions you've got about anything we've discussed today, or give us a ring at the office. So appreciate your time. Thank you for being here with us. And next month, we are going to have an online virtual supervisor reasonable cause training. So if your if your supervisors need to be trained to recognize signs of impairment, substance use impairment in the workplace, and they haven't had that training in the past 2 years, recommend that you sign up your manager, sign up your supervisors to minimize substance use impairment in the workplace. So once again, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we will see you on the next one.